And Greg, you can go first.
So Lisa, just to start off, what was the process like for setting the attendance plan for the Alamo Dome? How did that all come together?
Yeah, it's been months in the making, probably since the May timeframe. We have been working diligently with the Alamo Dome, and immediately we started putting our staff together and breaking us up into different subcommittees, because as you can imagine, there's so much detail that goes into it, from a student athlete perspective to a donor-based perspective to just fan engagement. There's so many aspects to it. So we started putting that large committee together, and they've been working again diligently since probably about the May timeframe. And then of course we were guided by medical experts, by county experts, by the city, and really being informed by what our local environment was.
What were the factors that led to that 17% number? I know the state orders allowed higher than that, and that seems like kind of an odd figure. How did you get to 17%?
Yeah, if you look across the nation of the schools that are playing, and particularly in Texas, I don't know if any of them are really at the 50% that the governor had put out there this summer, because you still have to social distance. And when you factor in the social distance part of seating everybody for our stadium, that ended up being about 17% of our capacity. So it was really a combination of starting with our total seating capacity, doing the social distancing, and coming up with that capacity number.
A lot of people are trying to figure this out, but very, very few are doing it with an indoor venue. What sort of extra challenges, or how did that layer on top of what you guys had to sort out?
Yeah, it is unique to us. And, gosh, back sometime this summer, the governor actually had a meeting with all the athletic directors, and I did gently remind him that we played in a covered facility, and if that would have any different impact for us. And even at that point, it didn't seem like it would, as long as we keep the ventilation. All the CDC recommendations for enclosed environments, and again, having clean air ducts and keeping ventilation going and those sorts of things. So we really relied on Steve Zito, who manages the Dome, and the city, to ensure that facility is meeting the CDC requirements for enclosed facilities.
And what have you really gauged about the fan response and the expected turnout now that you've sort of put out this plan and we're in game week?
Yeah, I think for the most part, people are so excited to have football. They want to see football. I think if you gauge people, they didn't think they would actually have the opportunity to come to a UTSA football game. And then of course, there's some frustration about seating capacity and having to move seats, and we totally understand that. But for the most part, people are really fired up, and particularly to support Coach Traylor, this new coaching staff, and this group of student athletes. So there's excitement.
Okay, Evan, we'll go to you.
Sweet. Hey, Dr. Campos. I'm wondering, do you feel like you're going to get the full 17% there for Saturday's game? Are there any early indications on what the numbers are looking like for tickets?
Yeah, I have not had a chance. If you heard earlier, I've been at an NCAA meeting all afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to get the ticket sale number for today. But we are, our individual game tickets just went on sale on Monday. We had to take care of our season ticket holders. So our hope is always to sell it out at whatever capacity we have. And again, I think there's a lot of excitement right now. But on the other side of it, we understand that people are going to have a comfort level of watching it on TV, through the internet. So there's going to be a balance. But for those that are ready to watch live football, be in a stadium environment, to have that social aspect, I think we're going to have quite a few fans Saturday.
And you mentioned Steve Zito and the Alamo Dome. How much of this planning process was sort of the Alamo Dome kind of spearheading the charge, or how much did you guys have to look at some other options? Again, essentially what I'm getting at is, were there some other stadiums that you were looking at with their procedures and saying, oh, like this is a good idea, this is a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And I give a lot of credit to Steve and his staff that, there's a lot of organizations that were looking at this and we're giving best practices. And he really took the lead on that facility side of it and getting those best practices and sharing those with us. And then of course within Conference USA, we were meeting 2 to 3 times a week talking about how people are opening their stadiums. So we certainly had a lot of conversations of best practices, what's working. And then we've had the benefit that there have been some Conference USA games that have been played at home, and we can learn lessons from those games. Now that we're finally getting to be able to be in our stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, what are some of the messages that you have for fans who are planning to attend a game, maybe this weekend or in the future?
Yeah, my message would be to be flexible and to be patient. We're all going through this for the first time. We have a plan, but in practicality, we'll see how it all works in terms of getting into the stadium. Give yourself a little bit more time. We are going to do temp checks. We are going to have social distancing. Things are going to be different. And for our fans to be patient and flexible, to be excited that we do have football, but and then the masks are huge. That is going to be unlike, a Texas State where when you were in your seats, you didn't have to have your mask on. In the Alamo Dome, because it is an enclosed stadium, masks are required, and we're going to enforce that. And so to be patient with those that are enforcing it, they're just doing their job. But that is a requirement, and we want to continue having games in the Alamo Dome, and part of that's going to be this joint responsibility of the fans doing their part and UTSA and the Alamo Dome doing our part.
And I was also reading the release about the preparations for going to a game, and there seems like there's the contactless, getting the tickets, but B, I find this interesting because it's fairly new, and it seems like this might be an idea that sticks long term, but the contactless concession stands, I'm very curious. I didn't see the app for it, but or the app name, but if you can give a little bit more details into what that's all about.
Yeah, so there's going to be a QR code for the mobile food ordering. I have not yet experienced it myself yet, so that's going to be a new experience for everybody. But to your point, there are things that have come out of COVID that I think can be longstanding, and have sort of pushed us to think about those sorts of things. And but to your point, the mobile food ordering is going to be different, and hopefully a perk and a new thing that our fans will enjoy.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
John, you're up.
The masked man. I like it. Mask up so you can birds up.
Sorry, we're in a loud newsroom and it's almost 5 o'clock, so people are yelling, and I'm like,
That's right. I got a 6-year-old who's screaming back here. I wait for him to run in here.
Dr. Campos, if you guys happen to get to that 17%, I mean that's gonna be a very large number of people coming to an event, probably for the first time since all this stuff happened here in San Antonio. Do you guys feel that y'all have maybe an added responsibility to not just do this well, but to get it right immediately and to kind of continue that going forward, just to kind of set the tone for how more big events could happen in this city?
Absolutely. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the Alamo Dome and UTSA athletics, and that's why we have pushed a lot of messaging through social media, through emails that this is a big deal. I've gotten on our coaches and our athletics training staff, everyone that we got to make sure we're doing everything right. And again, there's going to be some bumps along the way that will improve for the next game. But our first concern is our student athletes, our fans, our constituents, and we want to make sure that we are putting an event that's keeping them as safe as possible and to mitigate the spread of COVID. And so to your point, yes, there is responsibility, and it's a shared responsibility, but we're really looking forward to all executing this great plan that we've put together.
I know that your plan is pretty comprehensive, but was there anything during that process that maybe things that you just normally don't think about, and having to adjust to those kind of things that maybe the average person just doesn't think about nowadays in this era?
Everything. I think from how we have our officials meeting, there's a pregame meeting that typically you have a lot of people together. That's going to be, virtual, to how we interact with our media. That's very different from you all, to the band, getting the band onto the bus to the stadium, into their seats. I mean, it's every aspect of the game, and again, to your point, things that you just had to really pay attention to that you never thought you would be really thinking about to that detail. But everything that goes into putting bringing these constituents, the team, all the personnel in, we had to think down to the detail of how all that's going to be worked.
And one last question. I know Memphis, they had to cancel their game this coming week. Have you heard anything from them? You have any status on the future of that game, hopefully next Friday?
Yeah, I've been in communication with our athletic director, and we'll continue to be in communication. You know, there's it's too early to tell how that will affect things, but we're optimistic that it won't have an effect. They're optimistic that they'll be back at practice next week. So we're going to play it day by day, as we do with everything these days, and stay in constant communication with them.
JJ, you're up.
Lisa, the 2 non-conference games that you guys had to move this year are canceled. Are those canceled?
Yeah, so the you're talking the LSU game and the Grambling.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, we're still having conversations of what that might look like. You know, is there a future date to schedule those? So canceled, I would say canceled for this year, but conversations happening about what that could look like for the future.
And then there was a recent change to the Houston series. Why make that change, and what kind of went into that decision?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think, JJ. My mind has not been on our scheduling because we actually made that change. We've been in the works with that. And you got me, JJ. I'll have to go back and look, but I know we've been moving a lot of things around. We're in conversations of getting some other games, obviously, to complement those. So I got to go back and remember all the specifics. But as you know, there's been numerous changes in our future schedules that I'm day by day right now, JJ. So.
How difficult is that trying to juggle? I mean, some of these contracts are fairly large sums, and there's a shortfall with the budget reduction. How difficult is it juggling that without being able to know?
Yeah, what I would say for the changes that have been made, there's a lot of conversation. So, and that's what I was trying to go back to. I mean, those conversations might even been happening pre-COVID, or maybe even in the summer. It just takes a while then to execute those and to get those signed. So we're continuing to look at our future schedules. But yeah, right now we're really just focused on day to day and what's happening currently. I think a lot of people, not many people we're just trying to get a schedule for this year, and not a lot of people are looking at future years during this intense, complex time right now.
I wanted to ask you about the $5 million donation that was announced last week. It's my understanding that was included in part of the original fundraising figures. Why make that announcement now?
Yeah, so our original plan, great question. Our original plan was to make that announcement at a groundbreaking. And as you all recall, COVID hit right when we were starting to do the mobilization of that groundwork at race. And so we never had an opportunity to really acknowledge James, Indiana, and we wanted to really acknowledge their gift and the contributions and the support that they have. And so we thought, here's another opportunity as the walls were being raised, again, not being able to have an official groundbreaking where we can invite everybody, which that was the original intent, but now shifting and pivoting to when the walls were raised was a great opportunity to recognize their great contributions. And then there'll be others, other announcements that are already included in that 13.1 million. But those donors certainly deserve that recognition. So it's not exactly how we had planned it, which is common for everything with COVID, but we do want to give recognition to the donors who have supported us.
Thanks, Lisa.
No problem.
Okay, Greg, back to you.
Yeah, Lisa, just to clarify a couple of those scheduling points. So for Grambling and LSU, for instance, those guarantee payments, are they like off the table until a future rescheduling, or how does that play out?
Yeah, so again, we're still in negotiations and conversations with those two teams. So nothing's been determined. We're just still talking about it at this point.
Is it sort of the same thing with Houston? I know it was the 24 and 25 games that got moved. I know that's not on the forefront right now, but is that, since it's mutually agreed upon, just like a no money buyout situation, or how does that work?
Right. Yeah. Any of those that get moved that way, it's mutually agreed upon. So, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's all coming back. We do have soon, I hope soon, we'll be making an announcement of why we did change the Houston game, because it helped us accommodate another game that we were trying to secure. So it's all sequenced, right? We had to make sure we got that contract accomplished before we move to the next one. So, but yeah, those changes are all mutually agreed upon so that there's no breaking of the contract.
And when you think about those guarantee payments and the arrangements for the new games that were added this year, like BYU, for instance, and things like that, are those conversations or negotiations any different on account of the circumstances and the challenges that every department is facing, or how does that play out?
Yeah, well, certainly the BYU Army, I mean, that was incredibly complex, you know, as teams were, you know, deciding not to play. I mean, that everyone's schedules were in flux, and it was like putting a puzzle together. And you wouldn't believe the number of phone calls, text messages, just the outreach that I was having with other ADs. Other ADs were reaching out to us to try to piece that all together. And we all knew that it all had to match up, and we were all in a really tough situation just trying to get a schedule built. So those were these negotiations were unlike any others, where you actually have time to really go through that whole process. These were very quick.
Okay, Evan, back to you.
Yep. I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Campos, for the time, because I know you're absolutely slammed right now with just this whole year. But I want to kind of draw back on that point, and I got a couple more questions after that. But for someone who lives in a world, I mean, football coaches and players as well, that it's so organized, what has this year been like? Whereas athletic departments are so used to putting games on a schedule for like 2030 at this point, to have this year be like, okay, we need to start moving pieces for this season and figure out how it's going to connect. Just what has this process been like for you as an AD?
Yeah, I want you guys to look at a picture of me back in March and compare it to what I may look like now. That it is, I think I have a lot more gray hair. That, I mean, what it's done is our department has really come together, and we are doing things again that we never expected we'd be doing and having to manage. And that's not specific to UTSA. That's nationally with anyone who's playing sports right now. So it is, again, all I can say is we've continued to be flexible. We've continued to, it's a world of change, and it's going to continue to be. I mean, you think about now, we are finally being able to shift our focus to basketball. Like it was very fall focused. We've made decisions. That's not even stable. There's going to continue to be changes. And now we're starting to focus on basketball, focus on what spring's going to look like with, 15 sports participating. So it's not going to end, and we just have to continue again to know that every day is going to be different, and it may not be what we planned.
Yeah, and this is a great segue into my next question. I just saw, I think moments ago, right, November 25th is the official start date for college basketball. What does that mean for your group? And we've heard talks about bubbles. We've heard, I mean, I have no idea what this is going to look like, but I'm assuming you have some inkling into how the college basketball season might happen. And are you envisioning maybe your group heading to a bubble or two?
Yeah, I don't know what's been officially reported, but we literally just got off that call. So I know that there'll be some initial reports about what all that's going to look like. But what I would say is, yeah, I think a lot of lessons have been learned from how we plan for football, particularly from the sports medicine side of it, from the testing side of it. I know Dr. Hainline from NCAA, he's gathered a new group together to make medical decisions on what testing may look like. And again, things are changing, new tests are coming out. So we're going to have to continue to be flexible and just monitor that and be able to make adjustments as new testing protocols come forward or new even testing models come forward. So again, it's a lot of planning for uncertainty and having a lot of contingency plans.
So with the so from this, I guess, let me backtrack. So today was really like, okay, NCAA, here's our start date that we think. And now from this point forward, you'll start having some answers to what the schedule is going to look like, which route we're going to take. But I guess in a broader spectrum, are we optimistic that college basketball season is going to look different, but B, there's a plan in place to finish?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, from an NCAA perspective, we're keeping that end date in mind. The championship, I think everyone's very sensitive to the spring sports and the winter sports that got those championships pulled right under them. So, people are going to do what we can in the best interest of our student athletes' health and safety. And again, things can always change. What we're really thankful for is that numbers here in San Antonio keep getting better. We need that to happen nationally. But yeah, that we are planning for as much of a normal basketball season as we can, and we'll start deep diving now that more decisions are coming out for NCAA.
And then lastly, just the RAF and the importance of that fund. I saw something in the write-up again that if games were to be canceled, there's an ask from fans like, hey, you can also donate your money to the RAF. I think the line here is, significant losses in this area of support would be detrimental to the program. So just during a time like this, how pivotal is it to get that RAF moving and to have that help from the community and donors and alumni to really pitch in and lift your guys up?
Yeah, it's so critical right now. I mean, we're having additional added expenses with the testing, added expenses with game management, with the different things that we're needing to do to keep people safe as possible. So no time than now. It's so critical for everyone to participate in our Roadrunner Athletic Fund. It's our annual fund. That's what funds our scholarships. We have about a $6 million bill every year for scholarships for our 350 plus student athletes. And we don't want to disrupt that. And that's what's core to us is serving our student athletes and making sure that they're having an exceptional experience culminating in graduation. And so that the folks that support RAF, whether it's through just a straight donation, philanthropic, or through a transactional donation through a season ticket, we really rely on all of that and our season tickets for our operation. So it is a critical year for sure for people to still be engaged in RAF and to support our student athletes, because it's directly impacting the lives of our student athletes.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Evan.
Okay, Hector, I believe that's you. I know it says something different on the screen, but go ahead with your questions.
Yep, it's me, Kyle. Thank you. Dr. Campos, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Hector. I'm doing well, thank you.
So doing this story on Coach Traylor, and Dr. Campos, I just want to get your perspective on this, because when you talk to the kids, it is amazing the relationship that he's already been able to build with them in what's it been, the 7, 8, 9 months that he's been here. From your perspective, Doctor, what have you seen from Coach Traylor and the way he's been able to connect with the student athletes to this point?
It's incredible. You think about out of those, 7 months or whatever it is, how many months have been virtual? And if it wasn't virtual, how stronger the relationships could even be had he had a chance to really meet with our student athletes in person. It is incredible what him and his coaching staff have done. And we know he talked a lot about it in his interviews, and student athlete came first. And if you all know me, that's critical. I got into higher education to make an impact in the lives of 18 to 22-year-olds, and that's why we're in higher education. And he, from his teaching background, he so understands that. And to your point, when I'm on the sidelines talking to our football players, that is the first thing they talk about, is how Jeff has got to know all of his players on an individual basis, knows about them more than just football, knows about their life, and he has that expectation of his coaching staff. And it's incredible. And those are the coaches that you want around 18 to 22-year-olds, because that's what we're doing, is helping develop future leaders.
Doctor, do you come away from meetings with him, or just, simple conversations with him, ready to go out there and just, get going for the day? Because I know that's one of the things when we chat with him during the day, I'm ready to run through a wall after I talk to him. He seems to have that effect on people. And you mentioned the interview process. I'm just wondering if that's something that just jumped out at you right away and has continued to do so in working with him.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I don't drink coffee, but I mean, it's probably equivalent, that he is the Energizer Bunny. He gets people fired up. He gets people excited. And you combine that, I'm sandwiched between him and Dr. Amy, who are both very, very high energy. And I'm a pretty energetic person myself, but I tell you, just no different. I got my running shoes on to keep up with those two guys. And, but yeah, to your point, he is, he's a connector, and he provides so much energy to the department and to his football program.
And Doctor, we're doing the story this week because he's facing his alma mater. Can you speak to that when you're working at a school and you've got, that anticipation, that feeling, that special matchup that comes with going up against a school that means so much to you? I know maybe it's a little bit different for you, but in that regard of the way it's that feeling of anticipation.
Right. Me and him have not talked a lot about that, but I can only imagine, that's the place that gave him opportunities. And we all have such a great connection to our alma maters, and it's always going to hold a special place in our heart. But at the end of the day, he knows he's a road runner, and he that's what's going to come first.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
No
Hey,
problem.
Greg, you're up.
Lisa, now that we're kind of in season and they're in the routine of testing 3 times a week, I wanted to dig into that a little bit and get some more details on that and how it's working. I'm curious, who is sort of facilitating it? I know there's some people use a hospital, some are through private labs. How is it working at UTSA?
Yeah, so we have an incredible partnership with UT Health of San Antonio. They're a sister institution. And so we forged a great relationship with them. And then we're it all goes through our sports medicine program. So I know you all have heard me just sing Dan Bellamy praises, but he and his staff have done an incredible job of coordinating that, of making sure that they're doing all of those tests in coordination with UT Health, and making sure that all the results are being submitted to Conference USA, and they've done an unbelievable job with all of those protocols.
Because it's a sister institution that's helping facilitate it, are you able to sort of mitigate the financial challenge of that? Is the cost a little easier on the program because of that, or how is that impacted?
Yeah, it's not, it's the relationship, right? Having, it is nice that they are a sister institution, but they're just like, the other providers. And again, we just have a great relationship with them to be able to have access. I think that's probably the most important thing, is the access. Early on, a lot of schools were having a hard time getting the turnaround that was needed for these tests. And I think that's where it's more important about the relationship of it being a sister institution, that we've been able to access the tests and then access the quick turnaround on those results.
So how is that being paid for then? Does it come out of the department's budget? I know in some leagues the conference has had a hand in it. How does it work for you guys?
Yeah, no, for all Conference USA, I shouldn't speak to all of each institution, but it for UTSA athletics, it's coming out of our operations budget.
How severe of a challenge is that? Can you put a ballpark figure on what it costs to do a round of testing?
Yeah, I mean, the PCR tests go anywhere from $85 to $100. The antigen tests are anywhere from $50 to $80. And then with the increased testing, 3 times a week. We probably moving forward with other sports, it's going to be 3 times a week as well. So all of those figures are to be determined as we solidify more of the testing protocols. But on average, it's the PCR tests are about $80 to $100 a test.
Per test per person?
Right.
Wow, okay. So how much of a challenge is that? That really adds up over the course of a year. How do you guys navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it goes back to Evan's question about, we need to fill the dome. We need to engage our donors. Obviously, we knew going into it there was going to be some cost for testing, so we have budgeted some of that in our budget. As we went through our FY21 budgeting process, again, we knew that was going to be something we were going to have to include in there.
And you mentioned the antibody testing. Coach Traylor brought that up a couple weeks ago as sort of I don't want to call it a new hurdle, I guess, something different that the conference introduced. How did that become part of the picture, and was that a challenge to put into action?
Yeah, so NCAA and Conference USA adopted the antibody, and this came out, gosh, it feels like everything's been a decade ago, but it really came out when there was concerns about, the virus attacking the heart, and so particularly for athletes, they wanted to make sure that our student athletes did get the antibody, and then if they did test positive, there was some additional cardiac tests that had to go with that. So the antibody was really important for the NCAA medical staff and Conference USA, and for us as well. So that is something that we obviously implemented and got done with all of our football players.
So is the antibody testing still going on weekly, or was that just sort of a one-time thing?
No, that's just a one-time test.
Gotcha. And so what happens with the players who tested positive? What is the process like to check for those potential conditions that can fall out in the underlying things?
Yeah, so we have a protocol, and it includes having EKG, blood work, an echogram, if I'm saying that correctly, and then based on all of that, a heart specialist looks at that and then determines if there were any concerns with that, then it would go to a cardiac MRI, which is, kind of the last or the most comprehensive diagnostic on a heart, I believe. So there is protocols again, and we work with our UT Health partners, Dr. Anderson, in helping us with those protocols and looking at all of those tests.
Have you had any cases where a student athlete showed some concerning signs, somebody who had tested positive for antibodies or anything like that?
It's a great question. So we've had, and you're specifically, most of our, if not all of our positive tests have really been asymptomatic or very low symptom within our student athletes. And I think that was something predicted by medical professionals in their age group. So we have not had any major concerns with any symptomatic student athletes.
Yeah, I was thinking in some of those things you do after, like checking the heart and the lungs, the EKGs and all of that, if there's anything that turned up in that regard.
Yeah, that for our student athletes, again, some of that is baseline, and every year there's the blood work or the EKG. I don't think we've had anything atypical from what we have, because again, some of those tests we were already doing and already evaluating just based on having elite student athletes. So I don't think it's been anything more dramatic than in the past.
So based on what we've seen so far, it seems like there's been very few positives within the department. Assessing it in the big picture, are you happy with the decision to go forward with the season? Do you feel like at this point that was the correct move for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just so proud of our student athletes. We knew we were going to have positives. We knew we weren't going to go an entire season without any, and we still have a lot of our season to get through. We're only on game 2, and but our student athletes have really held each other accountable. Jeff has really emphasized it. Our sports medicine program has really done a good job of educating. We had a lot of education sessions with parents over the summer, with students. again, we've done everything we can. And just like we talk to our fans, we talk to our student athletes, it's a shared responsibility. And but yeah, we've shown, at least in week 1, we've demonstrated that we can get through a football game and move on to the second football game. And but again, everything can change day to day, so we'll continue to monitor it.
And then lastly, we just touched on this some with the testing, but the overall financial impact to the department, you've outlined sort of the 10 to 15% reduction, and we've talked about some of the salary cuts and things. But are there any other steps that you guys have taken at this point to try to mitigate some of that loss or offset the shortfall there?
Yeah, no, we had a really great budget process this summer. Again, we knew going into it we were going to have to make some major adjustments. And now, we're going to really count on fans coming to the games, hitting our ticket numbers, and then again minimizing costs where we can.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Anything else for Lisa? She's spoken for quite a while, so. All right.
Thanks,
All right,
Lisa.
I appreciate you all.
So much again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Lisa.
right.
Thanks, Lisa.
Look forward to see you guys Saturday. Mask up. Mask up. Thanks. Take care.